Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me on this week's video of Table and Craft. This week, I make stalagmites. So it was kind of serendipitous this week because I had a particular adventure that was planned for our campaign that takes place in a cave. And it just so happens that I saw a really cool video about caves. Now, I'm really into the outdoors. I really enjoy hiking and backpacking. And there's a guy here locally that I follow who kind of does even more extreme stuff than that. And he recently posted a video. I'll link it down below so you can watch it. But it was him going into this kind of secret cave somewhere here, and it was so secret that he had to fly a helicopter to the mountain, rappel down to the entrance, obtain a key, and open this like little mini iron door. And then he crawled through this super narrow passageway just to get into this really awesome cave. Now, it gave me extreme anxiety to watch him like go through these places, like crawl on his belly and just, it was bad. But the cave was super cool. Now, I'd been in caves that didn't require any kind of crazy pathways to get there. You could just walk right in. And they blew my mind. So I made a cave tile set for this next adventure, and I wanted to kind of spice it up. And so I watched this video and I thought, hey, what's better to make this cave a bit more exciting and more interesting than crafting some stalagmites? So that's what I did. The stalagmites here are little clusters of stalagmites that you can actually, just stand on their own. But the great thing about them is you can turn them into full-on columns just by attaching them with a magnet. So let's go to the video and see exactly how I made these. Here's all the tools I thought I needed. I didn't end up using the texturing tool to the left or the tinfoil. But this was my concept. This is kind of my proof of concept here, I guess, is just making sure that this idea would actually work. So it did. And I made sure that I made these kind of in form with the size of the previous kind of pillars and columns I had made. So I made them to be stackable, so they're going to be twice the height. And I cut one piece in half and one piece slightly not in half, so that I'd have a bit of variation between the two column types. And then I cut a bunch of smaller ones, a lot more than what you're seeing here, to make even smaller little clusters of stalagmites. So I needed to find the center of each of these kind of foam blocks that I had cut, and then I just took the actual magnet that I was going to be placing in there, found center, and then pressed it in to get an imprint to know where to make the cut for the hole to insert the magnet. But I also use this as a guide to know where to start cutting down and shaping the actual stalagmite. I made sure to give myself a comfortable distance from the imprint of the magnet where I started to cut down, and this would be cut a little bit closer later once the magnet was inserted. But basically all you do here is you just kind of cut until you got a nice shape, making sure to have a nice round shape at the bottom. And yeah, got this all cut up, and then I cut up a lot more of them. As you're cutting, you can actually kind of chunk out a few pieces if you want to create these little kind of edges, as you can see here on this particular stalagmite. I wasn't a huge fan of this in the long run and ended up doing it a lot less, but went on to making the much smaller ones that were going to be attached to the sides of the larger ones and grouped with other smaller ones to make little clusters on their own. But this was a really good way of making sure they stand stably when you stacked them. In this shot, you can actually see the tolerance that I allowed from where I cut to where I had the imprint of the magnet. So once I actually got this cut out, I was able to cut closer. But when you pull these plugs out, make sure that you have your fingers around the tip really close, because you could end up just pulling out the whole side of the tip and then kind of lose the hole for the magnet to be placed in. So I get the magnet placed in, and then I push it down with a little barbecue skewer because it makes it a lot easier. And then I fill it with a little bit of hot glue and make sure that it sits flush, because I'm going to be putting another stalagmite on top of it, and it needs to sit flush. So if you do have a little bit of a bubble there, just blow on it a little bit until it's almost dry, and then I roll the handle of my X-Acto knife over it because it's cold metal and it dries and doesn't stick to it, and it makes it nice and flat. One way to really ruin this project is to not have your polarities on your magnets right. So make sure that you pay extra close attention to this and then swap the magnet over appropriately. Otherwise, they will not attach to each other. And then it just takes a little bit more hot glue and you got yourself a nice pairing. If you do this correctly and you just kind of go off of one of them, you will have an equal pairing between the two of them, at least on the polarities of the magnets. But you can see that it kind of went together nicely. And then I trimmed off kind of the extra at the tip there because I wanted to make sure that each ends of it touched and looked like it was almost seamless. And so they needed to be the same diameter on each tips of the stalagmites. After that, it was time to start texturing them. And I used the wire brush to do this mainly. Now, when I did this, I didn't just, spin it and do the exact same angle with the wire brush all the way around it. I kind of varied the angle at which I rubbed the brush across the stalagmite to give it a nice kind of cool, kind of natural striation look that you would get. And then I came in and made some even more exaggerated lines with the pokey end of my clay sculpting tool. And this actually came out with a really nice texture that I didn't actually use the tinfoil or the other texture tool that I have used in previous videos. And so once I got these all Mod Podged up with the mix of Mod Podge and black acrylic paint, it was time to start pairing them together with some smaller stalagmites. This makes them a whole lot more interesting. It also adds a little bit of stability when you do stack them. The great thing is that because it's foam, it's so lightweight that these almost are negligible in throwing off the balance of each of the columns when you stack them. So I got those paired up and got ready to attach them with hot glue. Now, I think if I did this over again, I probably would have done this, attached them before I actually coated them in Mod Podge, just because of the squeeze out of glue that you might get. It's easily cleaned up with a the poker tool on the clay sculpting tool, but it just would have been a lot simpler if I just did it first and then painted over everything and you wouldn't even really have noticed it. On about half of them, I actually attached 2 smaller stalagmites and kind of varied where I put them on it. I thought this really kind of gave it a bit more character, and I made so many of the smaller ones that I kind of wanted to put as many as I could on them, but I never exceeded just 2 small ones to every large one. This is really an area where you can get as creative as you like. I just kind of switched them up randomly. There was no real kind of pattern to it, but got them all attached. And then with all the leftover smaller ones, I just attached them to each other in little smaller kind of clumps of stalagmites, which really actually was a really smart thing to do. So much so, I liked them so much at least that I ended up making even more of them later because I only had about 5 clusters and I wanted double that. But these worked out really well. And as you can see, you really got to make sure you have your polarities right when you stack them, but they stack really well and they stand just fine. But the one thing I don't like about working with foam is how lightweight it is. So I added some weights, and I did that by cutting a steel rod into little small pieces like so. Now, while these are the size and weight that I've been looking for, not everyone can do this. I was lucky enough my dad actually had a metal chop saw, so that's what I did. But I think the jury's still out on this one. I really just want to find something out there where it's just a nice little small weight. You can get a lot of them for a really cheap cost. I found exactly things like this made of tungsten, but you don't get very many of them, and they're not cheap. So still out there, if anyone knows of any, please leave a comment below because I would love to find a easier long-term solution for this. But you want to push these weights in down deep enough to where when you fill it with hot glue, the hot glue doesn't come up past the surface of the hole, so they will actually sit flat. If you can't do that, or if you goof up on 1 or 2 of them, just use the metal roller technique to flatten them out. But I ended up painting those black on the bottom as well. I don't record it, but it was time to paint. So I mixed up a really light brown because I looked at all the stalagmites I could find on the internet and they are just this color. So it's a good neutral color though. It'll work for any kind of cave that's like tile set that's maybe brown or maybe even, like a darker gray, or it could even work in like an underdark situation. But then I gave them a heavy dry brushing with a light tan, as I do on all of my dry brushings. This one I believe is called Linen by Folk Art. But yeah, just got those all done up, and then I only did a brown wash on these, and I didn't do a second dry brushing because I was really kind of satisfied with the way they looked. The reason I didn't add the second dry brushing is because these stalagmites are going to be underground. They're not going to be exposed to a lot of elements that would cause them to have a little bit worn, dusty look to them. But so got that brown wash on, let them dry, and they were done. Honestly, that's all it took. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the little video montage I put together here. I took a lot of photos because I really enjoyed making these, but I hope you enjoy, and I'll catch you on the other side. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making these and photographing them, if you couldn't tell. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be posting more videos. I haven't missed a week for several weeks now, and I'm really excited to keep posting some of my crafts here. Go ahead and give me a follow over on Instagram. I'm posting photos there of my work, and I'm going to start posting more kind of like progress photos, maybe some stories, and put them in highlights on my profile. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in next week's video, whatever that's going to be.